Okay, Frank, it's 7. It's after 7. Frank, you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. Hope you're doing well wherever you happen to be.
Thanks.
I'm Frank, and I just will call the meeting to order, the July 14th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Yellow Springs Planning Commission. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Doden.
Here.
Pallotta.
Here.
Krieger.
Present.
Green.
Here.
Williams. Amend. All right, it looks like 4 of you are here. Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger and Village Solicitor Brianne Parcels.
All right, thank you. I'll just review the agenda very quickly for tonight. We'll start by reviewing minutes of 2 previous meetings, and then I'll talk briefly about a couple of communications that have come in. And then I take it since Laura is not here, we're not going to be having a council report, or will there be?
Lisa could update us.
Lisa, will you be doing a council report? Oh, you're muted. Okay, good. After that, we'll have a time for citizen comments for any items that are not on tonight's agenda. And then we have a series of public hearings, 2 conditional use applications, and then a whole bunch of text amendments to the planning and zoning code, mainly having to do with stormwater management. But I'm sure everybody, even if you don't have to be here, will like to stay around for and watch us go through the text amendments for the storm and wastewater management. Exciting stuff. Old business, new business, don't see anything listed there, any agenda planning that we have to do, and then eventually adjourn. So hopefully we'll be able to have a pretty efficient meeting tonight and not keep you too long. So you might be able to still get out and enjoy the beautiful evening. So let's first turn to review of the minutes. The first minutes that we're looking at was for our regular meeting, which was held on Tuesday, June 9th. Does everybody have those?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll just go through them 1 page at a time, and give you a couple of seconds if anybody has any corrections or changes that need to be made. So anything anybody has on page 1?
No.
Page 2. Page 3.
No.
Page 4. Okay. Well, if that's the case, I'll move that the minutes be approved. Will you call the roll, please?
We do need a second on that.
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you. Pallotta.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Krieger, were you watching for those?
I was present at the meeting, and I vote yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the second minutes that we have are for the meeting that we had on Tuesday, June 30th. The meeting was called to order at 12 p.m. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
No.
Okay. I'll move that the minutes be accepted.
Second.
Second. Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Yep. Krieger.
Abstain.
Okay. Williams.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Pallotta.
Abstain.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay. 2 abstentions. All right.
Okay. The next item on the agenda are communications. We had a letter from Don Hollister in support of the proposal for 506 High Street, the conditional use application there. And we also had, it turns out, 2 letters from Tom Underwood regarding 506 High Street. The first one was concerns mainly about traffic flow and parking and the alley behind the building. But that was followed up by a subsequent letter in which he talked to the owners of the building. And it sounds like a lot of the concerns that he had expressed in the first letter have been satisfied as a result of speaking to the owners. So all those letters are part of the record for this. Okay. All right, we'll go on to the council report. Lisa?
Sure. Well, I would like to give a council report about, sorry, I'm just bringing up some notes. The comprehensive land use plan. All of us, I believe, are on the distribution list from Aaron Sorrell as members of the subcommittee that was sent out on Tuesday, July 7th. And I want to share an update that was part of the village manager's report for a timeline for the overall comprehensive land use plan project timeline. So on July 15th, the changes requested by the staff and the steering committee should be incorporated. On July 16th, the materials that were sent for the steering committee are going to be moved to the main website that is sustainableyellowsprings.com. Right now, the target for council presentation is July 20th, then proposed between July 22nd and 29th are 3 virtual open houses, a daytime one, an evening one, and a weekend one with the same format for each. Then on July 31st, there will be a draft printed layout to staff for comment and review. And on August 10th, all changes will be incorporated in the website and print version. So project is being made on the comprehensive land use plan. I am a little bit concerned because the email from Mr. Sorrell didn't include a deadline for feedback to be sent. And I reiterated that request to him today before receiving information from Josue Salmarón about that timeline. So I think it's important to be certain that if those of you who are on this call have not had adequate time to respond, we need to put up a flag and let them know that you need more time to review. So I would welcome any thoughts about that.
I'd like to suggest that maybe I talk to Aaron to see about having another steering committee meet via Zoom and maybe just discuss with him after we've had a chance so we can actually just see each other again, as well as just handing that information in. Because not all the information is on the site yet, and I kind of, I would prefer to have it all there and then review it rather than piecemeal it. So I could contact him and see about having another planning or having another comprehensive steering committee meeting.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea. I think it's really important. This is such a critical project, and coming in these times when so much is uncertain and we're really having to pivot to rethink what might the future of land use be over the next, 2 to 5 years. So I certainly don't want to make any recommendations that would delay the project. And yet, I think we need to be really thoughtful. So I think that's a great idea, Denise.
Okay, I will do that. I'll reach out to him because I know everything, was slowed down by this. I'm sure he had, deadlines for this that had to be put on hold, and then he had other projects kicking in. So I'm sure he's been kind of scrambling as well, but we'll try to fit something in. I mean, I have seen some things that he's been looking at, but I don't want to be the lone voice. And so it's really important that the whole steering committee looks at it. And I know he's coming to council on the 20th, so I don't know that we'll be able to do anything in between that time, but I'll see what he says.
Good.
We have to get it right. So other than that, council has been, as you likely know, very focused on ordinances related to masks in the village. It has consumed a lot of time. A lot of agenda items have been deferred to resolve that. So I don't think there's anything else that specifically relates to planning, but I would say please spread the word, wear masks, protect yourself. Our numbers are going up, so we need to be very cautious and aware. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, now we'll have time for citizen comments for any items that are not on the agenda, and give everybody a few seconds. Anybody who might be out there, raise your hand or somehow indicate that you'd like to comment. Okay, not hearing anything, so we'll move on with no citizen comments then, and we'll go on to the 3 public hearings that we have for tonight. The first one is conditional use application for Joan Chappelle. Submitted a conditional use application for a home occupation permit to establish a private psychotherapy practice at 163 East Herman Street. So Denise, would you like to talk about the staff report a little bit?
Right. So Joan Chappelle has submitted a home occupation permit, as you said, for 163 Herman Street. She has had her private psychotherapy practice in the Humanist Building for a number of years at 106 West North College. She's now wanting to take it to a part-time basis and is interested in seeing clients in her home. Staff reviewed her application, which you have in your packet, and she provided a sketch that fits the requirements for 250 square feet or less. She also meets the requirements for having her off-street parking. You see she can have up to 5 cars. She has like a double carport. And those are all off-street. And her hours of operation will obviously be in the daytime. As I said, she meets all of the criteria for not having any additional employees. She meets the criteria for the number of clients as well. And so staff recommends approval of this. And Joan is here if you have any questions for her.
Okay, first of all, do any members of the Planning Commission have any questions for Denise about the staff report? So you said Joan is here?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me get my...
I talked to her earlier. She is here. Hopefully we didn't lose her.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
There we go.
I just lost my my normals viewing screen, so. Okay. So does anybody have any questions for Joan?
Hmm.
Denise, this is pretty similar to the Julie Williams situation, correct?
Yes, this is
Okay.
pretty, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. She's gonna, as it says on the application, she's gonna install an ADA ramp off the office entrance. It's pretty clean. There's
Okay.
nothing special about this one. And like I said, she's been in practice for years, so. If she had, I don't know, Frank, if she has anything she wants to add.
Okay. Joan, do you have anything you'd like to add or let anybody know? Everything seems pretty straightforward.
Just that at this time, because things are so uncertain, I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure what's happening with the Humanist Center, what's happening with teletherapy. I'm doing 90% of my client load now on virtual, and I don't know when it will be that we will go back to face-to-face, but I want a backup that I know that I can continue my practice seamlessly if anything changes at the Humanist Center or I share a room with one other person there. And if she chose to leave, I don't think I would want to pay what the fee is for that room. So I think it's pretty easy to stay at home right now. And I've got the room. It is an office and it's off street and accessible.
Okay. Yeah, I had one question. I know on the staff report on page 4, about the middle of the page, talked about the possibility of the applicant getting an inspection done by Miami by Miami Township Fire and Rescue, just to check for like smoke detectors and things like that. Is that something you'd be able to do, Joan?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions for Joan?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing on this application. I'll give people who might be out there an opportunity to raise their hands or chime in if anybody would like to say anything about this application. Okay, hearing nothing, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to Planning Commission for any final thoughts or questions or concerns anybody might have.
I think we're good to go.
Okay. Yeah, I liked the recommendation for adding to an amendment to approve this, that they have the Miami Township Fire Department do an inspection for smoke detectors, et cetera. What about keeping a log of clients? I would kind of assume that that would be something she would be doing anyway with this type of a practice. So,
Yeah, that's required.
yeah. Okay. So, would anybody like to make a motion? Lisa?
I move that we approve this, yeah.
So are you approving the application for home occupation as requested with the condition that MTFR inspect and approve regarding smoke detectors? Was that what you had?
Exactly that. Thank you.
I thought that was what you were.
Okay. Thank you.
I love that you read my mind. Thank you.
Thank you for it's so much easier to read minds via Zoom, I think. All right, I will second that motion. Okay. Is there any discussion of the motion? If not, we can proceed to vote with the clerk. Call the roll, please.
Yes, Williams. Williams?
He's muted.
Is he giving us a thumbs up or anything? Williams, are you there? Okay, Pallotta,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Got that one done then. Thank you.
I just
Joan.
want to double check Raven that you don't have AJ muted. He's muted himself.
He was muted, but I attempted to unmute him and it did not work.
Okay. All right.
Don't- That's my dog.
That was
Thank
AJ.
God it's not Lori.
I thought that was AJ.
Nope.
Is that another vote?
Two barks for yes, one bark for no.
That's right. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the second conditional use application.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you all.
And it's a Mark. Boy, Mark, I'm Obstalecki. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please correct me if I. Pardon me.
Obstalecki is correct.
Okay, good. Has applied for a conditional use application for collaborative professional office spaces at 506 High Street. Denise, would you like to talk about the staff report for that, please?
Sure. The coactive Yellow Spring space, 506 South High, is the former building that Ertl Publishing was located in. It is also the location for the Morgan Family Foundation. This, for quite some time, Planning Commission has heard from people in the community the need for office space, especially smaller offices that could be used for a small business or a nonprofit. And this is an interesting concept in that it will be a collaborative office environment with 8 offices and a collaborative space, a conference room, a room that Mark calls a huddle room. And then they'll have they have a shared copier, copying machine room as well. And he is here, as you noticed, which he can speak to that. Staff reviewed it. There isn't any changes to the footprint. The number of parking spaces required, it meets that. It has a total of something like 25, I'd have to go back and look, that has 19 spaces in the parking lot to the south of the building. And then it has about 5 to 6 parking spaces to the north of it, and to the east, there's actually some spaces that are on street in front of the building in a gravelled area, which you can see there. And so there's some cars to the right there that are parked in front. So it has a small little parking lot to the north and a larger parking lot to the south. And it is a one-way, so you would come in off of High Street, park, and then you would exit into the alley, which was the concern of the neighbor. You would make a right turn heading towards Davis Street, and then another right turn back out onto South High.
And you had mentioned, Denise, in the staff recommendations, the possibility for a bike rack.
Just to
and
add
then-
some more options for people, especially if it's going to be local nonprofits, local people that live in the community.
Yeah.
That would be an option to also help reduce the need for as much vehicle traffic.
And also you mentioned a designated
That's
ADA
good,
compliant parking space as well.
Sorry, Raven, leave that exhibit 4, because that really shows a good layout of it. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, and you also talked about the possibility of designated and ADA compliant parking space as well.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. It looked like there might be one by
Okay.
the Morgan Family Foundation, and Mark can speak to that. But that's very far away from the front doors to the main building.
Okay, anybody on Planning Commission have any questions for Denise about her, about the staff report? Okay.
So this was an office, and it's still going to be. It was an office before, and it's still going to be office space. There really isn't any change to the use of the building.
It was a publishing company, so there were offices in there. Raven, is there another exhibit that shows the demo plan of what it was?
There was.
Let's see. Maybe Mark, you can kind of, yeah.
I can jump in. So
yeah, why don't you jump in and
Okay.
explain?
Yeah, it definitely was. So there it is right there. But it definitely previously was used primarily as office space. So it was Vertical Publishing. I think they had a bunch of storage rooms in the back as well. So roughly the right-hand side of the building, the footprint is staying the same. And then we're opening up an atrium and some common spaces, adding that conference room. So I'm trying to maintain as much of the existing infrastructure as possible while still modernizing the space to sort of current times.
Okay. Do you have any people who are interested in renting office space? And do you see this as like people renting it long term or by the week, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I don't have any guaranteed tenants at the moment. I've definitely had some positive conversations. My going in position is that tenants will sign year-long leases for the individual offices. So when you rent an office, it is yours for however long the term of the lease is, and you can bring in employees or a client as needed, but you kind of own that space. And I think that under sort of the current constraints with COVID going around, that's a positive attribute as well. Definitely monitoring the situation, and we'll have to reevaluate kind of the current status as we open, hopefully in the late fall.
Okay.
Raven, if you want to go back to the exhibit 4.
This is Lisa Krieger. So, I mean, I think this is the kind of space that is really needed in the village. And yet I think that during this pandemic, there's going to be an additional onus of responsibility for you to think about safety of your tenants, and to have, particularly in the common spaces, to develop policies and protocols that your tenants will follow. I mean, that will protect you from liability, having hand sanitizers, deciding if in the collaboration in common spaces, if you want people to wear masks. I mean, I just do think it's really going to be important. It's changing the landscape of shared office space. But I think this is a really great idea and something that's important for the village.
Yeah, at least I completely agree with you. My going in position, at least now in time, which may evolve as we move forward, is all of the shared areas will require masks. In the individual offices, I think that people that are renting the tenants won't be required to, but even we may have to shut down things like the conference room, the huddle room early on, make sure that we have a cleaning crew coming through there regularly. Definitely on the sort of in the back of my mind, but I think this whole situation is constantly evolving. So when we reach the point where we're finally opening, we'll have to definitely decide what the rules are going to be.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What is your timeline, or your ideal timeline for opening it?
Yeah, so I have permits submitted with the county. They've been submitted for about 3 weeks now. I anticipate those will be ready soon. I have a couple of contractors' bids available, and I have an idea of what my top choice is. Obviously, my schedule has to work with the contractor's schedule, but based on what they've told me, they should be available to start within a few weeks. The construction process would last roughly 2 months is what I was told. My goal is to get this all done before the sort of winter sets in. So sometime late fall is a target.
Any other questions anybody has for Mark? Okay, I'm going to go ahead then and open the public hearing on this in case there's anybody from the public who would like to comment on this application. I'll wait a few seconds to see if anybody chimes in on it. Not hearing anybody or seeing any raised hands, so go ahead and close the public hearing and then bring it back to any final discussion from members of the Planning Commission on this. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the request.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the application. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Indeed. Williams.
Yeah.
All right. Green.
Yes.
Pallotta.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mark, for coming by. I can't see you right now, but thank you very much and have a good evening. So, all right. Well, yep, thank you. Now we'll move on to the third of our public hearings, the one that everybody's looking forward to, the text amendments regarding the zoning code relating to stormwater management. Get out the whopper of a packet on that.
Right. Yes.
Frank, just
Yes.
FYI, I went over this just quickly with Brianne to see how we could do motions on this. So
Right.
she's
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, she's good with chapters at a time. You want to, for example, discuss chapter 1226 in its entirety, and then the motion can be to approve all of the amendments within that chapter as one motion. So we can go through it in that fashion.
Okay.
Okay.
Will
So,
that work for your discussion of it, Denise?
yeah, that's fine. Raven's going to
Okay.
put up the Exhibit A. We'll just start with that. And there aren't any, if you just want to scroll to the First Amendment. Okay, right there. What I had suggested in my report was that that I didn't feel, unless you have so desire, that I didn't feel that we needed to discuss the green or yellow highlighted ones, because in the past, keep that on that one, Raven, just because we have they were either approved in general, we haven't, officially approved anything, or they were amended at the meeting, previous meeting that we've had. We've had a couple. We've had several meetings, actually.
I just want to just ask a question. It might be a dumb question, but so we talk about subdivisions and then minor subdivisions, and it doesn't have I know that it seems like a minor subdivision is a lot where you divide it, where you're not putting in a street, and a subdivision is where you're putting in a street. But
Yes, there's minor or major, and major subdivisions in the past 20 years, we've probably had 2, maybe 4. We've had Thistle Creek, we've had Birch 3.
Right.
We had a smaller one, Stan Cliff, over on Kenneth Hamilton Way. And then
Yep.
back in the early 90s, Kingsfield. We don't have them very often, but we expect that we're going to be. Because there are some pockets of land to the northwest and to the south that could be developed. They've been on the market. So we wanted to make sure with the minor subdivision, especially because we've been doing more infill as a result of the goals of council and the previous visioning that had happened 10 years ago. We're trying to clean up that by doing the stormwater regulations and updating those. But in the process of updating those stormwater regulations, we found there were other places where we needed to tweak some things. And if we're already, what I did was if we already had something that was going to be amended, I went ahead and added in those other things under the same amendment. So we weren't having to come back twice.
Sure.
The other thing we did, Raven was helpful with that, and going back and we looked at the entire codified ordinances, and any place where stormwater was mentioned, we looked to see if that needed to be updated, and in a couple cases it did need to be, and so those are in here as well.
So,
That's why-
does there need to be, is there some place where there's a definition of a minor subdivision and a major subdivision? Or is it clear enough that it doesn't need to be defined?
It should be, well, there you go. There's a replat there. So basically the difference between with a minor subdivision is you're taking a lot and you're creating an additional lot. With a replat, you're taking a lot or you're combining lots, but you end up either with the same amount of parcels as you started with in the beginning, or even less. You're combining. You could actually be taking 4 small little parcels that are non-conforming and making them into 2 conforming parcels.
Okay.
Conforming lots that can actually be built on.
Okay. So we don't need to define minor subdivision and major subdivision.
I think I'd have to go back and look if it's defined in 1284 in our definitions, but
I think it might be.
It definitely, well, in the planning code, which is what we're looking at now, it does have replat and subdivision.
Yeah.
And then it goes on, you could go to chapter definitions of other terms not included, maybe in 1284, but that's in the zoning code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephen, are you asking that question because you're wondering in terms of the applicability of the regulations, or is that just a general question?
Well, yeah, just because some of the things apply to, to certain, to a plat, to platting, and some things apply to, subdivisions. And I just didn't know. I mean, if it's defined someplace, then that's fine. But it wasn't defined here. And as I was reading through it, it was a little bit confusing, what the boundaries were. It seemed like, that a subdivision was something where you created a street, and a minor subdivision wouldn't involve a street. It was up to, making up to 5 lots. So, and I'm just assuming that that's defined someplace.
It's further defined. It should be further defined in the actual minor subdivision section. The subdivision, the major subdivision, which is this larger document.
Yeah.
That gets really into. I've never had to walk through one yet, which is going to be something new for me. It's going to require engineers. In the past, our planning and zoning employees of the village, I usually had a contracted engineering company that was reviewing, and that's all through the document because it gets very involved. You're basically creating streets and you're creating infrastructure,
right?
And it's a big deal,
right?
And so we just want to make sure that in everything we do, whether it's the minor or this major, especially with the state of our infrastructure, that we make sure that we have stormwater regulations included in that, which is basically the main part of this revision. But we went ahead and revised other things that needed to be brought up to today.
Okay.
So that just brings me quickly to that first one,
Thank you.
which we ended up getting spending a lot of time on at our work session, which was uncommon lot. We kind of got a little bit off track, and I want to kind of bring it back again. One of the concerns Laura Curlis had was the idea of having an uncommon lot. She didn't want the flag or panhandle lot in there. I tried to explain that uncommon lot has been in the planning code since the 1990s, and that we brought it forth into the zoning code a couple of years ago when we were trying to meet the need of more infill development as a result of the previous comprehensive land use plan, the visioning plan, which were both in 2010, and then subsequent to that, council goals. So this was truly just a definition of that. Right. But she also then had some issues with, but we can bring that up later because there's other areas where this applies. So I guess my question is, I was trying to put in a definition of uncommon lot. We cannot have the definition, or if you want the definition, do you want to, what she didn't like was it's typically characterized as a flag lot. I mean, but that is what it would be.
Yeah. Denise, if I can add on there, flag lots, uncommon lots, panhandle lots, rear lots, whatever you call them, they all have similar features in that they just don't have your minimum frontage. And that's in any community that says we want to focus now on infill, and these tracts would otherwise be landlocked and not developable if we don't allow them under our planning or under our zoning code. So it doesn't really matter what we call it as long as we are consistent in such references.
Thank you, Brianne. I guess my thought is it kind of really is a council question. It's a bigger question than what, I mean, a couple of years ago, we went to them, we said, okay, uncommon lots is something in the planning code. It's something that we could bring forward as a way to do infill, and council agreed to it. Now, I mean, if we're gonna want to reverse that, then I think that's a council decision.
But it will be regardless because the text amendments are taken forward to council. So I mean, I think you're in good shape, just being clear about your recommendation on that and then moving it.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well.
Okay, so are we saying then not to strike out the typically characterized? I mean, just leave that in there?
I would probably like to see it left in there just as a point of clarification. Doesn't limit it to that, but it's just one example of.
Yeah. You could also just say also known as a flagger, or panhandle, or rear lot. Again, it's not restricting the definition. It's just giving people a better idea of, well, what is an uncommon lot? Just because it's irregular shaped, it's because it's got less than minimum frontage. That's the chief characteristic.
Well, we had a situation though, Brianne, recently on a corner lot where that wasn't the case, where they actually had enough frontage, but it was irregularly shaped in order to meet the need of the square footage requirement. And I think there was a bit of concern about that as well, but.
Do you put in the phrase, but not limited to?
Exactly.
I would
I
put
mean,
that
it
phrase
gives
like-
people a better general idea when you use more descriptors like that.
Yeah.
But you're also saying this is not covering every single characteristic of what might be an uncommon lot.
So let's define that, but
Not limited to.
not limited to
Yeah.
a flag or panhandle lot. And then not have that, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, all right.
Okay.
Yep,
So just to clarify, if this is going to be included with a raft of others for that particular chapter, if you want to go ahead to move to approve the amendment here, then we can include that section in the larger motion to approve the whole chunk. I think we could do that.
I didn't follow you, Judy.
I mean, couldn't we just keep going and then just adopt the whole chapter or not?
Well, you're holding a public hearing and you're changing what you have proposed. I mean, it's a Brianne question, but I'd take a motion to amend.
She's
definition.
absolutely right. When you make an amendment, you should vote on what you're amending to approve before you approve it.
So if someone wanted to move to amend the proposed definition to add the words, but not limited to, then you get a second, you vote on it.
Okay. I will so move. Is there a second?
Second.
Poor Judy.
Okay.
You guys.
Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Second, I'm sorry, who seconded there?
I did.
Pilata.
Yeah.
I did, he said on Zoom. Williams,
Yeah.
Pilata,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on. You'll see all this in green. We've already been through this. Is everybody, now we haven't technically voted on that officially. So should we need to do that?
This is what you're presenting to amend, correct?
Yes. And we already discussed it and everyone was in agreement with it, but there hasn't been an actual planning commission vote on it.
So Brianna, I'll weigh in, but the way that I'm looking at it, because it's similar to what we've done in the past, is that for purposes of the public hearing, this is what's been presented to both planning commission and to the public as the proposed amendment. So that the vote does not need to come until the end unless you are amending what has been presented.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I missed that.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're making changes during the public hearing, you have to
Okay.
vote on the changes you proposed during
Okay.
the public hearing and then vote on the body of the proposed
Right.
changes.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, here we, at the last meeting of the full planning commission prior to meeting with the breakout group, we talked about that the streets would still be under Greene County specs, but that curb gutters, associated storm sewers, and driveway aprons and construction, driveway aprons would be under the village's design standards. So that is what this is. And then we added in and construction of. So in other words, when the developer goes to design the streets and construct the streets, as well as the water and sanitary sewer systems for that, they're going to have to follow Greene County specs. But when they go to do the curbs, gutters, the storm sewers, the driveway aprons, that's all going to be under the village standards. And then furthering that, we took out the runoff following the runoff methods of Greene County because those were from the 1980s. Although I'm sure that Devon has probably just about revised those now. But instead, we've added in our own section for stormwater management. The other thing we talked about in the gray section there was that we decided in the last couple meetings, but not with, I think the last meeting was entire planning commission. There was only a few added. There was that we still wanted to make sure that even though the subdivision was approved with a stormwater system, whether it's detention basins that were added, your underground piping system, that when people came or individual contractors came for building a house on an individual lot, that we still had them follow the stormwater guidelines for low impact development. And that would be, which we'll share later, that is going to be contained in Appendix A, which will replace what is currently in there called Estate Street Design, which is also something we want to get away from. I mean, we like the idea of the design of swales and maybe not having everything with underground piping, but the Estate Street Design, the way we have it written, is really encouraging large lots, large tracts of land, and we really kind of didn't want to do that with a little bit of land that we still have left. This would, we instead gave, wrote in language, and it's right here, saying that in lieu of a conventional stormwater system, a design, which would be your underground pipes that would go straight to a catch basin and hit our storm sewer, that they could come up with, you know, an innovative low impact development design that the Planning Commission would consider that might involve other, you know, different types of methods to get the water filtered before it hits our storm system. So that is what all this talks about. Alleys will be constructed according to Village Yellow Springs specifications. It doesn't necessarily mean now that they will have to be paved. It will just depend on what the Village of Yellow Springs specifications are going to be for that.
Does the village have anything about cul-de-sacs? It doesn't want dead end alleys, but it's cul-de-sacs are okay? Or cul-de-sac?
You know, cul-de-sacs are really not as accepted anymore. So I'm trying to look, is there somewhere where we had something about that?
Because I just think about the snowplow driver or the garbage truck or whatever.
Right.
You know. Okay, it's neither
Well,
here
I
nor
guess,
there.
you know, that would, you know, the one nice thing about this, Stephen, is that everything has layers where the Public Works Director will also review these things. And I know there was a plan that had a concept plan that had been submitted for a large property, a tract of land that ended up not happening. But that Public Works Director was like, put the brakes on the fact that this is not going to work for this alley, because you have these short stops where there's no way for the big rumpy trucks to turn. So those are kinds of things that everybody will get their hands on and get a chance to look at. There'll be especially for the major subdivisions, there'll be required to meet with staff first, and then there's probably gonna be a work session with planning commission before they even come with their final concept.
Okay.
The other thing I wasn't quite sure about, and even Lisa, you might even be able to provide some insight from council on this. You know, we've talked about the ADA compliant sidewalks, but Public Works had no issue with blacktop in lieu of concrete. But one side of the street installation, is that something that we're gonna, are we gonna want both sides of the street? I don't, if we're trying to be more walkable, can it just be one side of the street?
You know, I don't know. And I also don't know what's in the active transportation plan. So I'm sorry, I don't know.
Maybe planning commission could give me the leeway to double check that with the public works director. And we'll go back to the active transportation plan and double check that and make a decision based on that.
Well, if you're approving a major subdivision, it's probably not going to be included in an active transportation plan at that point. If you were to insert the words, you know, one side of the street installation where feasible or something of that nature, it might give you the wiggle room, but I'm just thinking you're looking down the road at something that may be proposed later, and ATP is looking at already existing neighborhoods.
Yeah, you're right. And this is applying to new subdivisions, and this one side of the street installation was already in there.
Okay.
So, but we never really talked about whether we wanted to leave it as just one side of the street, or for more walkability, did we really want to try to get to a point where?
Well, you know, and your language here says may include one side of the street too. So,
but not limited to.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they could do both sides if they want.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would, as a developer, I probably wouldn't want to do both sides of the street because it's just more of an expense. So that's where I was kind of hung up on.
Well, I mean, it would be better. It's better for the community member who needs the accommodation if it's both sides of the street.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear. You know, but I just don't know what the ADA, I'm not familiar enough with the ADA requirements to know if that's, you know, okay to just say it's just on one side or it has to be on both.
I got to imagine that ADA compliance means it's on both sides of the street. If you live on the side of the street without the sidewalk and you're in a wheelchair, does that mean you're going to be, you know, trying to go across the grass?
Well, I mean, ADA requirement is for the sidewalk. If you're building the sidewalk, if there is not a requirement to have a sidewalk, ADA does not apply. So,
okay.
Right. And that's a very fact-specific determination too when you're talking about subdivision regulations, because technically the sidewalk can be within the right-of-way, or it could be a requirement to be built on private property, and then the property owner would be responsible for maintenance. It depends on how wide the street right-of-way is, whether the sidewalk's actually in the right-of-way. So ADA compliance on sidewalks, I mean, that's a municipal issue that gets argued back and forth, but your government obligation is to, if you are saying we are requiring sidewalks here, it's just to make sure that they are compliant in terms of width and installation, not necessarily that they you know, are on both sides of the street, because if the right of way isn't wide enough for sidewalks on both sides of the street, or there's private property considerations where the sidewalks can't be built, you're going to get into a lot of litigation.
Okay.
Well, I mean, could we keep it somewhat vague and just say, may include use of blacktop in lieu of contract? And, yeah, boy, I don't know.
I think you are vague enough.
I think, yeah, I agree.
May. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
Yeah.
But leaving the one side of the street installation in there?
Yes. I think it's okay.
Because you said may, and
Yeah.
that builder could come and say, I want to put in lower cost housing on this side, and if I don't put in a sidewalk on that side, I can do it, but if I do, I can't, and you might want to negotiate, and when you leave the may in there, you just simply have more options for.
Okay,
negotiating.
all right. Okay, that sounds good. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the other one, we just wanted to make sure that, it was clear that that they're gonna, obviously they're gonna get a licensed engineer to prepare an electric plan, but that we're gonna want a village designated engineer to look at it, and that would be at their expense. Easements, this has been one that actually just kind of came up. Easements with right-of-way widths up to 10 feet as required shall be provided on rear lot lines and alongside lot lines. And we just put the yard just to clarify it a little bit more. And we say up to 10 feet, but typically I've had a couple of minor subdivisions where I just made sure that there was 5 feet on both sides of the property line for the utility easements. And then on the rear, it was 10. And the reason I left it as 10 on the rear was because that's the closest you can get to the rear yard lot line with where our setbacks are in all residential areas. And with our side yard lot lines, the closest you can get is 5 feet in RA and RB. And this is simply for the utility easement. And then the other language, we just, had taken out that part about the Green counties following. We have our own lot requirements. Those are pretty set. The red one, uncommon lot configurations, it used to say are permitted access on local streets only. And what that has done is, there's, use the example, there's a couple of different people that have come to ask about, they have really very, very large properties on the south side of town, on Allen, and they wanted to be able to do a minor subdivision. So that there could be a second house, a second property, and that Allen Street is not considered a local street. So I thought instead, if we just said, and must be approved by the Planning Commission, that decision can be made on an individual basis by the Planning Commission.
We like that.
Now, there was some concern raised at the last work session by Laura about the fact that local streets would be less traffic. However, one of the things that we did put in the code, as many of you who were on there before may recall, that you can't even do an uncommon lot configuration if you don't have at least 15 feet if it's a private driveway or access easement, or 20 feet beyond your minimum required frontage. So if you're over in Allen Street and you want to do a minor subdivision and it's 60 feet of frontage on Allen Street, you have to have 80 feet in order to even consider doing an uncommon lot. Okay, then stormwater management.
Hold it before we
Go ahead, go on.
before we get past this thing here. I was reading this thing. So about the impervious area. So
Okay.
for any, the gray part, I just okay for any proposed development on 1 acre or less of impervious area.
Right.
So it doesn't. It's not. It sounds to me like what we're talking about is impervious areas. My understanding is that that would be like roadways and rooftops and stuff. Do we just mean for any proposed development on 1 acre or less of land? Did we bring the impervious area thing over from when we were talking about the size of the structure? Because to me, when I read that, that sounds like what we're saying is that if you had 10 acres, but only 1 acre of it was impervious, or less than an acre of it was impervious, that these would apply. And I think we're just talking about 1 acre or less of the whole lot, not the impervious area. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Oh, that kind of went around and around because at one point we were going by square footage.
Yeah.
But the idea of kicking in these really strict criteria for anything that's just a square footage of like say a house is way too much. So if you have 10 acres and you're going to build 20 houses and they're each 4,000 square feet, that's big houses, but you know what I'm saying. Once you of impervious area, that's where that would kick in. That in that whole proposed development, like Birchford 3 would be a good example of that. There's definitely more than an acre of impervious area there. So in that case, then they have to come up with these stricter guidelines where they have to do.
But these are the less strict guidelines. This 1 acre or less of
Wait,
impervious.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if it's 1 acre or less of impervious area.
Yeah.
So which is typically going to be a house, or it's probably not going to be a street because.
Okay.
I mean, you could do it. Say you have 4 or 5 acres of land.
So basically, this really does mean impervious area. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
My question though is, and I don't want to propose an amendment, and granted I am new, but when development is actually resulting in the impervious area, you're not necessarily redeveloping something that's already there. For any proposed development resulting in 1 acre or less of impervious area, is that an appropriate clarification? Or is this, like Frank said, where we're actually developing impervious area?
Yeah, I think maybe the confusion is with for both number 1 and number 2 with the on before 1 might be the word that's causing the confusion. Does that make sense?
Because that was a standard that Tom Dietrich said was pretty standard. But I understand what you're saying. If anything less than that, we at least want the stormwater guidelines. But he said it would, or if it's like, say, for example, Homing just got approved for a pocket neighborhood development, and that's definitely less than an acre of impervious area, but we still excluded them. And that language is written in there that excludes a PUD or a pocket neighborhood development, because we very well may want to have these stricter standards.
Okay.
And in that case, they had to do a stormwater detention area in the front.
But should we rephrase these then to just clarify those 2 lines by number 1 and number 2?
Yeah, put resulting in.
Yeah, for any proposed development resulting in.
I think I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do we need to vote on that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move that we change I'm sorry.
What section? I'm sorry, because
Oh, boy.
the section.
We are on page 9.
1 and 2. B1 and 2, what section is that? 122606, B1 and 2?
122606 A7.
122606 A7?
Correct.
1, it's B1 and B2 of section A7.
Correct.
Yes.
Raven. Raven, I asked Raven yesterday, I said, these don't seem, some of these, as you go further down, it's like the numbers weren't right. And so she was looking at that yesterday and had just finished it today. So there could be, but those, Brianne, are just going to be number changes only.
Yeah, that's just cleanup. That's not substantive.
Okay, good.
So I'll move that we change the ons in 1 and 2 there to the words resulting in.
I'll second.
Okay. To call the roll, please.
Yes, Green,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, good. All right. And then moving on. We can screen, unless anybody has any questions, these are all pretty standard ones we've talked about before.
Okay.
And the choice 1 engineering reviewed it, as well as Tom Dietrich. And here, yeah, that was all, yeah, he was okay with all of that. And then we just added here, we just simply added in formally approved by a village designated engineer at the expense of the developer. I don't think anybody has any issues with that.
So hold it, go back up.
Mhm.
This thing here, statement or purpose.
Mhm.
I think that this is all essentially commentary. I don't know that this adds anything to it. It just sort of I don't think it's bad, but I don't know that it isn't holding anybody to anything. It's just kind of preamble. I think it could be, that whole paragraph could be removed.
Let's see. Or could it just be a statement of the purpose of it? You didn't think that described why you want to have a detention basin? Or
You go in the if you go in the next section under planning guidelines, it actually kind of recapitulates, why you want to have a detention basin.
okay.
I just don't. It sounds like it was left over. It was text somebody had, and they copied it and pasted it in there, and it was, I don't know. It doesn't really matter one way or the other, but it isn't actually defining anybody doing anything. It's just kind of
Verbiage.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it? Would it be verbiage that did you like it or dislike it? Because it could be added to the stormwater guidelines brochure.
I didn't really like it. I'm not
Okay.
sure what they're talking about. As urban development continues to transform previous watersheds into highly impervious urban areas, that doesn't sound like Yellow Springs at all. It sounds like this was left over from, something in Cleveland or whatever.
Okay.
So, I mean,
then how do other people feel? We can always delete that and just make that.
Well, and the recommendations presented in this report.
yeah.
What report? Yeah. I think I agree with you.
So would that be striking all of L,
Yeah.
which means
Well, unless you still have L as the guidelines, but you detention basin planning guidelines.
Planning guidelines starts the next letter, which is M. So
Yeah.
L is just covering that one statement or purpose.
So if you would move to strike L in its entirety and re-letter the remaining sections back.
Yes.
And you want to put detention basins because they're getting into, I thought, what the guidelines were for building a detention basin.
Yeah.
So,
So that probably should be planning guidelines for detention basins.
okay. All right. So L, planning guidelines for detention basins.
L
What?
was becoming planning guidelines for detention basins after we strike.
Yes, and that'll be L. And then we'll just take, Raven, just completely delete L and just make ML, and we'll clean the
But
rest.
we need a motion on this, right?
Yeah, I would suggest doing two.
Yes.
One is to strike L entirely, and the second is to reword the new
Okay.
for L
I'll
as guideline 4.
start with the first one. I move to strike L entirely. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Was that Green?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Would you call the roll, please?
Yeah, Pilata,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay.
And then move to, well, we have to, changing what is currently M to L and changing the title to planning guidelines for detention basins.
Second.
Second.
Would you call the roll?
Was the second was Krieger? Okay, sorry. Krieger,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Pilata,
Yep.
Green,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thanks for catching that.
Yeah. Well done.
Okay.
Do they need a motion, Brianne, to then re-letter all subs?
Oh, I don't know, because can that just be our cleanup? Because
Yeah, that can be part of the cleanup since
Yeah,
we
okay.
already know that it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything with what will be M?
Oh, I did have a question. So under their F, all storm tiles found entering a proposed development or found while excavating. So I don't think it should be needs. I think it should be need. Oh, maybe need to be investigated. If the storm tile is found to be in working condition, the storm tile must be replaced. Shouldn't that be if the storm tile is found to not be in working condition?
Yes.
So we were okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is found to be in non-working condition.
Okay. And then that needs could be need while excavating need to be
Yes.
investigated. It would be singular.
Yeah.
All right.
Is found to be in, is found not to be in working condition. Is found to be in non-working condition. Maybe sounds better.
Okay.
The storm tile must be replaced with what? With new within the development. That just doesn't sound right.
With new tile, right? Oh, replaced. Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just struck.
Just strike everything.
With
Just must be
new.
replaced. Period.
Yeah, just strike everything after replaced.
Okay.
Okay, do we, somebody want to make this motion on this one?
I propose that we make the changes to F.
Well, so that is what F? What's above that? I'm sorry.
It's L. Planning guidelines.
So
Oh, 1226.06A7.
A7 and then what F?
L. I guess
And it is L, even in the replace, as you replaced,
Yes, it's now L.
Yeah.
L, F. Okay. So your motion, I'm just going to say it so we make sure we get it right here. The motion is going to be to amend section 122606A7L and then F in parentheses to add the prefix non and strike everything after the word replaced.
Yeah.
And we took the S off of need.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't need to, that's just like a typo. Found to be in non-working condition, Raven.
So did someone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
I will second it.
Doden?
Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Pallotta?
Yes.
Williams?
Put in between it, be.
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Krieger?
Perfect.
Yes.
Doden?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything for M and O? One of the things under 7, it was grass at one point, and the working committee made up of a couple environmental commission people too, felt that it should be turf grass, and they really weren't thrilled about turf grass because they said it has to be maintained and regularly cut, and so they wanted more specifically that either an HOA, if that was going to be a part of the subdivision, or that there was some sort of an agreement with the Village of Yellow Springs Public Works Department, because the Environmental Commission felt that would be a lot more to add on to a small crew to have to maintain. But that instead they could go with what we call managed natural landscapes, which it happens to be in our weeds ordinance.
Yeah.
So they added managed natural landscapes, they added turf to the word grass, and then wanted more specific agreement with its maintenance if they go with turf grass.
I guess the other option would be is if it's something planted other than anything in a managed natural landscape. So any other kind of grass might also need to be cut no less than 5 times a year.
Well, except I think the turf grass is just referring to those grasses that people, it's the term that gets applied to those grasses that people typically use for their lawns around the yard.
Plant.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the non-woody or whatever they called it, non-woody plant growth.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then we just added about the maintenance agreement, if it was with an HOA, would be added into that in this CCNRs, which would be recorded on the final plat at the Greene County Recorder's Office. And then
So in R, this is picky, but like the last sentence there, this shall include calculations to confirm that the construction will function as intended instead of as designed. I just, I don't know. It seems to, I mean, it's really getting down into the weeds of that, but if it was designed wrong, it could still be functioning as it was designed. but it might not be doing what it was intended to do.
Okay.
It's just, I don't.
Yeah, on the other hand, that presumably the design will have been gone
Yeah.
over by people. So
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't change. We don't have to change it.
Whereas intention can get pretty vague as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just leave it as designed.
Okay, we'll leave it, but no, at least we have
Yeah.
the part that, the village designated engineer has to approve it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
So we do have that. And that was included actually is that R now? So, okay. And then we went ahead and renumbered street trees. And this is all for street trees. What's in our tree lawns, which are in our public right of way. One of the questions that came up was that Sarah Mend had said, she sees that 1 year is just not enough time. 2 year, 3 years, and people pretty much agreed that 3 years after the trees are planted, that the developer should replace those trees.
Guys, I'm just gonna give you a time check. It's 8:30 and you still have to go back through every one of these and vote on all this stuff, so just saying.
So 3 years. Tree, I think, tree lawn shall be a minimum of 6 feet wide between the sidewalk and curb or street edge. We just were defining the fact that it's 6 feet wide. And then it was always, before it was tree lawn shall be a minimum of 6 feet, period. So we just went ahead and put in wide between the sidewalk and curb or street edge, just to further define it. 9, interior landscaping following the managed natural landscaping requirements, threw that in there. We also have a tree list, so that's all good. This one, parkland dedication, that we kind of went round and round on that. Public use, dedicate. And each
But again, that's for subdivisions of 50 acres or more, which
shall be dedicated for public use. I don't know why we scratched out 4. Open space, parks, or other.
probably should be a comma after use.
Okay. Oh, I see. There shall be for public use, open space. Yeah, no, take out 4. Okay. And then we're going on down to construction of public improvements. Those, again, those are going to be Greene County specs for anything that isn't, whichever is more stringent, that's how we decided it. For street sanitary sewage, it's either going to be village regulations or Greene County, depending on what we determine to be the stricter. And that kind of gets us pretty much through. We just added a word in underground electric line.
Now for this one, for 3 here, do we have the same problem that we had earlier with
Yes.
on 1? Yeah.
Yeah, on, what was the word? On
Resulting in?
resulting on.
Yeah.
Resulting in, on 1 acre or less.
So would somebody like to make a, I'll move that we,
Yeah,
A second.
and
yeah,
that we change the on to resulting in.
yeah.
So hold on, we're at 1226.1.
Yeah.
11. 3?
Yes.
1226
A,
11 A
B3.
B3.
B3
Yeah.
3 add resulting in
and taking out on.
To replace after development.
And I think we'll have, now do we have the same thing in 1226? No, okay, never mind.
So Doden, you could put it, you got the motion?
Yeah, I moved that.
Second,
We call the roll.
Williams,
Yes.
Pallotta,
He's, Dino, you're muted.
Pallotta. He's trying. Krieger,
yes.
Green,
Yes.
Yeah.
Doden?
Yes.
I got you, Pallotta.
Do we need to, Judy, go back and vote on something else prior to that?
Nope, I don't think so.
Keep going. We just, as a result of Sarah Menn's question about liability, we wanted to make sure we had that language in our replat. We wanted to make sure it was also in other areas. So we added the applicant and or property owner will be held responsible for any negative impact on surrounding lots. We already have the bond requirement in our subdivision regulations. So everybody felt that that kind of covers that.
Now here in number 4, we have that on thing again.
Do we?
In-
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Wait, what?
The number, okay.
In 1226.12,
12A4, a motion to approve resulting in.
to change on to resulting in. I'll move that. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Resulting in. Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Green.
Thank you. Green,
Yes.
Doden,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on. Just added the applicant and the property owner for negative impacts on surrounding lots. And we struck out which becomes apparent within 1 year. We just didn't put a date on it. Further down, fees may be collected in cases where recovery of incurred costs is necessary. We wanted to add that in there. We're good on that. Everybody was okay with that.
All right.
And then this is the end here. 12, that's it. Okay. So that's Exhibit A, the big one. I'm suggesting that we skip Exhibit B for right now. We may have to bring it back in August because we're still doing some work on it, but it's looking pretty good. I'd like though for us to at least move on. If we have time, we'll come back to it. But if we could move on to Exhibit C. So, are you saying, Judy, at the end we can just vote like overall for these different ones? I mean, because there's no changes to these from the last time, but I don't know that we voted.
You have to go chapter by chapter.
Okay, so this is chapter 1220.
Would it be easier for you to go back and then vote on the chapters that you just reviewed and then
Chapter 1226.
Yeah,
Get that done.
I don't care, but
The only thing within that, well, yeah, there was 1226, chapter 1226. Let's go ahead and vote on that. So we're absolutely clear. We're done with that.
Yes.
so, sorry, I'm just getting a little woozled here. So did you already do 122401 and did you do 122401?
Not yet.
Okay, all right, just making sure. So 1226. So I'm not sure what you folks decided to do. If you want to go ahead and open a public hearing on all of chapter 1226 and then make a motion to approve all changes to chapter 1226, you can do that. And then that sort of moves that chunk out of your way.
Yes.
Frank, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Sorry. Okay, I will, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing on the proposed changes to chapter 1226 of the subdivision regulations. Give people a while to chime in if there's any public comment. I hear a dog.
She says she's out.
I think that was a bark of approval. Hearing no comment, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to Planning Commission. Would somebody like to make a motion to send these, are we moving to send these recommendations to council? Is that the,
Yes.
right? So I'll move that we send the proposed changes to chapter 1226 to council.
I second.
Would you call the roll, please?
Ed Green,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now we can move on to,
Other chapters.
you want to move on to Exhibit C, chapter 1224?
Yes. Chapter
Okay.
1224 is simply just a little bit of housekeeping here. We needed 20 days instead of 14 to keep it in line with other sections of the code. We definitely need that amount of time because we have to publish things 10 days ahead, 10 days ahead of the meeting in the paper, and we have to send notifications out to all the neighbors and put a sign up. So,
Okay. Any questions or concerns about that from Planning Commission? Okay, I'll
No.
open a public hearing on the proposed change to chapter 1224. Give people a few minutes to chime in if anybody has any concerns or questions. Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing. I'll make a motion that we approve the changes or that we recommend, that we forward to council the proposed changes for chapter 1224.
Second.
Second, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Krieger,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
All right.
okay, chapter 1248, 03, spatial requirements. In table 1248-03A, we're adding a structure as measured from its furthest extension must be located outside the minimum setback areas. We've just had issues with, it's in, because we're doing this infill, we are different than other communities. Lots of communities just go with the building footprint, but we want to encompass every part of that building, the roof eaves, balconies, decks. I mean, everything has to be outside of that setback area. And so we're just clarifying that wherever we can. And that's all that changes.
Anybody have any questions about that?
No.
Okay, I'll open a public hearing on the proposed change to 1248.03, the spatial requirements. Wait for a couple seconds to see if anybody has any questions or concerns. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back, and I'll move that we approve the proposed change to section 1248.03 spatial requirements and send it to council. Is there a second? Okay, call the roll, please.
Yes, Pallotta,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, the next 5 exhibits are under chapter 1260. They're 1260-01, buildings and structures. Under B1D, it said about structures being removed, construction buildings and structures being removed from the site within 15 days after an occupancy permit is issued by the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator doesn't issue the occupancy permit, it's actually Greene County. So we're striking that. Under, do we
Do
want
we
to?
need to consider these exhibits separately, or since they're all in the same chapter, can we take them all together?
I believe you can take them all together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unless you need to amend or,
Yeah, unless you need to amend them, you can take
Okay.
all of the ones that are in the same chapter together.
Okay.
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 Under 1260-02, dimensional provisions, E, minimum lot frontage, we're adding in the language about the uncommon lot configurations may be approved by the planning commission if additional requirements in the village's subdivision regulations are met, which is chapter 1226-11 or 1226-12, which correlates with minor subdivisions and replats, which you had looked at.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to amend. No, I think because uncommon lot configurations were already there. And you have to approve the entire major subdivision anyway. So I think it's more, it does affect more just the minor and the replats. So I don't see any need for any changes there. 1260-03. This is where we got into the access easements and driveway standards. One of the things that staff noticed when we had a 20-foot minimum requirement, but we require a setback from the side yard of 3 feet, that we were short a foot. In talking with Colin Altman, he had no issue for these individual driveways. For you have your 20 feet of frontage. If it's a minor subdivision, if it's a private access easement, you can have 15 feet width, but the actual driveway itself could be constructed only being 12 to 14 feet wide. That gives 3 feet on each side for a grassy area that's not pavement.
So I think it makes more sense to me to say that shall be a minimum width of 12 feet, because the 12 to 14, it doesn't, if it's a minimum, then only the smaller number is really applicable.
Okay, yeah, I was taking into consideration the difference between but that's fine. That's fine. I was thinking about when it's a minor subdivision versus just a private access easement, and whether you have one side yard lot line or 2, but that's
Right.
fine. That makes
Okay.
sense.
All right.
So we will have to do a correction on that.
Right. So we want to change that. Shall be from the current language, shall be a minimum width of 12 feet.
Yeah.
You want to make a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to change to just say 12 feet.
I'll second that.
yeah, what section are we there?
1260-03.
3, and that is
A1B.
A1B.
B.
Okay.
Strike.
Would you call the roll, please?
Okay, and then who moved? I'm sorry, Green?
Yes.
And I
And
second.
Doden. Yep, okay, Doden,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Yep, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Did I get you all?
Yes.
Thanks.
And 1260-04A13. We had already added in about this furthest extension from the accessory structures, including, setbacks for balconies, porches, decks. But we also added in, as a result of a meeting with the Public Works Director, accessory structures may not be built within 7.5 feet of 7,200. I need to take out that comma there. 7,200 volt distribution lines, and an inspection by the village's Public Works Department is required prior to zoning approval. Relocation of lines will require aid to construction at the expense of the developer. And this is specific because we are doing these infill and these splits. Sometimes we're finding that the electric lines may just end up being too close, and the concern is those primary lines.
And that language was already in the record for tonight, right?
It's in the record for tonight. Yeah.
Right.
We just added that. It wasn't added at the last committee.
Right.
It was added by staff, but yes. And then, of course, 4 is a stormwater management plan shall be submitted with the permit application following the guidelines for low impact development contained in Appendix A of the planning. And this is for accessory buildings.
A05.
There's no issues with that, no changes. The last one in chapter 1260 general provisions is 1260-05, which we had already said was fine with. It was just referring back to that stormwater management systems or the stormwater guidelines, that stormwater has to comply with one of those two things.
All right.
Here of.
Was there already a
Okay.
vote on the previous section?
Are we going to vote on all of it?
Well, we need to have a public hearing on 1260 here. These proposed changes of 1260 first, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll open a public hearing on the proposed changes to 1260-01, 1260-02, 1260-03, 1260-04, and 1260-05.
I move.
Nope, nope, we're not moving yet. I gotta
Not
wait for
moving.
public hearing.
Sorry.
Nope, it's all right. Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the Planning Commission then. Dino.
I'm going to move.
I'm going to second.
Okay. Move that
And
we
I'm
pass
gonna-
these,
And I'm
Moving
going to
every-
assume, yeah.
pass these along to council.
Yes, the motion is to send those all amendments to those sections to council.
Okay.
Doden,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Halata.
Yes.
We're getting close here, folks.
Okay, 1262-08, Exhibit J. No changes to than what had been page 2. What had been proposed before. And on page 3, after consulting with the Public Works Director, we added wastewater, disposal of wastewater shall be into the sanitary sewer system. That has always been in there. We added wastewater must be filtered to minimize discharge of grease and solid matter into public sewers. And then nothing on page 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11. On page 12, those changes under pocket neighborhood developments related to the requirement that we decided after our first pocket neighborhood development that we went through with Home Inc. that we wanted to have, not only do we have a staff meeting, but we want to have 2 consecutive meetings with Planning Commission, one being a work session to review what they have submitted and giving us a chance to digest all of it. And then the second one being an actual regular meeting. So we're just making it mandatory for pocket neighborhood developments that you're going to have a minimum of 2 meetings where there will be public hearing potential input.
Anybody have any questions about those changes to 1262.08?
No.
Okay, I will open a public hearing on the proposed changes to 1262.08. Hearing no public input, I will close the public hearing and I will move that we pass the suggested changes in 1262.08 on to council.
I second.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Krieger,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Exhibit K, we had site plan review isn't required. It has never been required for single or 2 family dwellings in a residential district. However, we're now requiring a plan for mitigating stormwater using the stormwater guidelines under Appendix A. And I'm not sure why I don't have however underlined. I'll have to look at that. Oh, no, it was down. It's because however, a zoning permit in accordance with what it shall be required. So we made that a second sentence. We also added structures may not be built within that 7.5 feet of, yeah. So there's that language.
Anybody have any questions about that? I'll open a public hearing on the proposed
Frank?
changes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Frank, if you want to go ahead and do 126806.
Or 126803, yeah, go ahead.
126803, yeah.
Yeah, but 126806 as well, and then you can do the whole chapter.
Oh, right, you're right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed that too, sorry.
Oh, where is that?
126806.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Under D2 stormwater, we just took out unless impractical. We're just now saying stormwater shall be removed and how it is to be removed either through the stormwater management plan or the stormwater guidelines, whichever applies. And that's those 2 for the 1268.
Okay.
And 1268 is the
Right.
chapter is site plan review.
Okay. So open a public hearing on the proposed changes to section 1260, chapter 1268. Okay. And I'll close the public hearing on 1268. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Motion to send to council.
The changes to 1268. Okay. I'll second it.
Okay, Krieger,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Affirmative.
Williams,
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay, Exhibit M, chapter 1272, zoning permit required, just fixing a typo and then adding in the language again. Oh, all right. So I highlighted the 144, 200 square feet. At one point I was thinking we should maybe be in alignment with the Greene County building regulations. Greene County building regulations state that if it's less than 200 square feet, they don't require a zoning permit. But that seems like a pretty big building, especially if we're doing we have a lot of smaller lots. So I'm thinking maybe we should just leave it as it was at 144 square feet. I mean, City of Xenia, I think anything over 50 feet, they want to see, they do a permit on. So it was always 144 square feet. I'm thinking maybe we should just leave it. And then the other language that we have talked about the same stuff as before, about setbacks, everything has to be outside the setback. And then the 7,200 volt distribution lines has to be 7.5 feet away. And then we made sure that resurfacing of existing impervious surface lots without increasing the number of spaces. So if somebody takes a lot and it's pervious and they want to make it impervious, they have to get a permit for that.
So because you've noticed the change is 200 square feet, do we need a motion to amend?
Yes. Okay, I'll move that we amend to remove 200 and replace it with 144.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those or call the roll, please.
Pallotta.
Yeah.
Williams.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the impervious surface area. So, and that finalizes that chapter.
Well, we have to have a public hearing on,
Yes.
was it 1272?
1272.
Yes.
Right. So I'll open a public hearing on the proposed changes to section 1272. And not hearing any comments, I'll close the public hearing on section 1272 and move that we put the proposed changes, send them on to council.
Second.
Second, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Green.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Pallotta.
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Okay.
And lastly, for these exhibits, Appendix A fee schedule. We are changing, we're adding demolition permit. And because we have so many things that have to be signed off, that if a person signs off on ours for electric, water, they can pretty much then take that form. Greene County has already said they'll accept that form as part of their requirements for a demolition permit. And then we have what's called a zoning compliance permit. We have people that call that want us to send information. Typically, if a realtor calls and just says, hey, what zone is this in? That's no big deal. But then sometimes we actually have more involved stuff where we have to write letters. So we want to make that a zoning compliance permit that they have to fill out. We'll then provide that, yes, this is compliant, and there'll be a fee for that.
Who is they?
It could be a title company, it could be a lawyer, it could be a realtor. I mean,
And this is just to verify what zone in the village the lot is in question.
Well, if it's typically if it's just like, well, what people will call all the time and just say, looking at a property at this address and wondering what zoning districts it's in. That's no big deal. But then we have someone who's buying a building and they want to know what the uses are for that, what's permitted, what's conditional. And it gets more involved.
Okay.
And so for those, we ask for them to complete a compliance certificate or permit that really outlines what it is you want. I mean, I had one case in particular that they just didn't clarify, and they kept I kept providing them with information, and between the lawyer and me, we were getting frustrated with the title company because neither one of us knew exactly what they wanted. And finally we just said, just write it down and then I can fill in the blanks, because it
Okay.
seemed like, it was pretty ridiculous. But, that took lots of staff time. I'll never really recoup it completely, but I feel like it takes enough time that we should record it as a permit and document it as such.
Okay.
So that's appendix.
Any other questions about the changes to the fee schedule? Okay, we'll open up a public hearing about the proposed changes to the fee schedule.
And just as a point of clarification, that's Appendix A in the zoning code fee schedule.
Okay. And I'll close the public hearing for Appendix A fee schedule. And I'll move that we approve the proposed changes to Appendix A fee schedule.
Second,
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Yeah, Williams,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Pallotta,
Absolutely.
Krieger,
yes.
Doden,
Yes.
right?
So I just want to close with say Exhibit B, which is Appendix A in the planning code. We need a little bit more time on this. MPA is going to be helping us. They're going to put in some nice graphics, so they're all consistent. We want to embellish a little bit more on descriptions and a better intro. And I just want to publicly thank Nadia and Tom Dietrich, Nadia Malarkey and Tom Dietrich of the Environmental Commission. Tom did a lot of work on trying to make the calculation worksheet that we're going to require developers to do to have it make sense on how you calculate it. And Nadia provided information on these different types of designs. And of course, along with choice one, it's just what you originally saw in choice one is a lot different than it originally was. But we want to just go ahead and, because this is going to take some time, and with everything that's happening with council, this is not going to get all thrown at council by even early August, I don't think. So I think we have time to bring it back at the August meeting, and hopefully we'll have it finished. Okay.
All right. I think that gets us through all of the public hearings. Thank you, everybody for your attention to details and patience.
Thank you to everybody, because this has been a year-long process for us.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm very happy.
All those words, it's a lot of stuff that needs to be caught.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I look forward to working with all of you.
Yeah.
Brianne, we're looking forward to working with you. Everybody knows Brianne is the new solicitor for the village.
Oh, okay.
That was not explained.
Right. Hi, Brianna. Now, do we have anything under old business, new business, or agenda planning?
We talked about sidewalk signs. I think it kind of felt like with everything going on to maybe put a pin in it for a little bit. But I have had a couple of people that have brought up this whole solar sky, right to the sky. So I think maybe just under agenda planning, if we could put that on there. I think that might be something to talk about. Sarah Mend also had a fracking document that she thought maybe Planning Commission at some time in the future might want to talk about. I don't know, Judy, did Planning Commission get that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, it went out. Yeah, it went out because
Yeah.
subdivision
Yeah, we
regulations.
got it.
I mean, if
Everybody did get it, yeah.
I would say that and I would make this a general requirement. If anybody wants to bring up something new, you have gotten a number of curveballs thrown your way about let's suddenly review all of this, that individual needs to give you a comprehensive report, and then planning commission determines whether or not they're going to add that to their agenda, having read that comprehensive report.
That makes sense.
Okay, I have a question. We were talking about signs on the streets. These new, and it's just, we can move over it real quickly. These new bike racks that came up, where did that come from? Maybe I'm just missing the boat completely, that they were just put up on by the Winds and I think up by Sunrise. Where did those come from, and what transpired there? That never came through us, or should it have, or whatnot?
Johnny Burns is online here. Let's see.
Not to get us on sidetrack. We don't need to go there. We don't have to.
No, but Johnny can address that.
We had those made. It's been talked about for a couple of years about adding more bike parking, and we located them in the tree lawn areas to where they was not in the sidewalk areas. Actually have more coming, but we installed the first 8 to where they wasn't not in any buildings or any areas of the sidewalk that had car parking and all that.
It's good enough for me.
I personally like them. I think it's nice not to see the bikes chained to the trees. And people, at least maybe it'll encourage them to actually ride their bikes downtown, not have to worry about it walking outside, not having it there anymore. So.
All right. I think don't have anything else for agenda planning. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Huh? All those, would you call the roll on adjournment?
Oh, you actually can't even oppose a motion to him, but okay, sure. Williams.
Oh, come on, let's
Plata,
Yeah.
Krieger.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, everybody.
I can't believe it. It's like 9:08 or something.
9:08. There's still
we
time
got
for
through
a cocktail.
everything.
So
That's great.
Exactly. Good night, everybody.
Good night.